my action research by Arellano. So preparation and needs for the ELL learners. Basically, all teachers working with ELLs must have a strong understanding of oral language, academic language, cultural diversity, and inclusivity. And for oral knowledge, a knowledge and understanding of language as system and the role of components of language and speech, specifically sounds, grammar, meaning, coherence, and social conventions. For academic language, teachers must have a working knowledge of academic language and be able to recognize the difference between conversational language and academic language. For cultural diversity and inclusivity, teachers must have a working knowledge and understanding of the role of the culture and language development and academic achievement. In regards to the statement of my research problem, ELL learners have a tough task that they encounter once they go to school in a foreign country. Me personally, I was able to experience this. Learning a new language is challenging itself, but it is important that ELL students must learn to read, write, speak, and understand the way it's used in the classroom. In addition, a teacher in the school may not properly identify what's causing the difficulty of the student and the reason why they may be overwhelmed. A teacher may believe that it's a lack of English language skills when it's really learning and attention issues. Due to these type of misconceptions, many ELLs get the wrong kind of help, delayed help, or no help at all. So this brings me to my research question. Basically, what challenges do ELLs face in the classroom? How can I, as a teacher, support ELL learners in the classroom? What are the most common reasons ELLs struggle in school, and how can I identify it? In addition, how can I support ELL learners in learning language? What are the learning difficulties of ELL learners in my classroom? And with this, in regards to my research question, I will be focusing on primary, grade 1. So here I've gathered various annotated bibliography. In the first one, I was able to discover a journal on inclusiveness, socially and academically, for ELL learners, ways to build ELL vocabulary skills, the culturally responsive pedagogy, and also I found 3 journals on how to teach ELL learners in the classroom. The first one is the various learning styles supporting English language learners, and finally I found an article that the teaching of English as a foreign language and how the study of contextualize versus decontextualize English itself. So basically, as a teacher, for myself, some of the roles and responsibilities that I have is that I have to know my students, engage and challenge my students, differentiate learning, communicate with the ELL teachers around the school, create an inclusive classroom, and communicate at home, basically having a communicative relationship with the students and the parents itself. And also, I discuss basically what is a welcoming school. So this kind of connects back with inclusivity. So I state how school communities will adopt a whole school approach for receiving English language learners. Open communication will exist between the school and the families. The school will support a welcome team to introduce students to the school community. The school will stay in regular contact with families, providing them information about community resources. So basically, my definition of what I've stated here about a welcoming school is that in order just to create an inclusive community for the ELL students, to make them feel more comfortable along not just them but also their family. So going back to my research action plan, basically the data sources that I chose is that consideration for educators when working with English language learners, basically get to know the students, identify students' English language proficiency, literacy development, identify critical curriculum, differentiated learning, scaffold, and also monitor. And in terms of triangulation, the ELL learners in my grade 1 classroom played an active role throughout the various stages of assessment that I conducted during my placement. Basically, I chose topics. I had them choose their own topics, chose their own books with their own liking. Allowed each student to feel as if they have ownership of their book. Throughout each book that we did guided reading together, I conducted a running record where each student was able to witness how they were being marked and which words they needed further improvement on. In all parts of triangulation, the learner was involved. In addition to taking part in conversation with their teachers and ELL helpers in the school, we discussed that learners should also be involved in discussions about final products and about data collected from observation. Basically, by giving the learner a role in the assessment process, the goal is to encourage students to invest in their own learning, thus increasing student motivation. Also, involving the ELL learners in assessment by using student as self-assessment, where they're able to tell me after what they learned and how we can approach this next step. And basically, in order to continue with validity and reliability, the school itself consisted of a very diverse group of students from the beginning. The first thing I did was I educated myself in knowing all students' ethnic background, what language they speak at home, and their first language. This allowed me to create a classroom with equal opportunity for each student. I asked various associates and LTRs in the school for more information about the learners. I also created various activities and books that I prepared consisted of topics and themes that all learners could relate to, making explicit connection between previously learned concepts and the ones it creates interest. For example, recently it was Chinese New Year, and I had 2 students from China, and once I read them the book about Chinese New Year, they were very interested and wanted to participate more. Student engagement, partnering them up with our students in the class was also beneficial, as it helped EL learners about topics that I taught in class. In addition, I discovered that by allowing students to use their native language in the classroom, it allowed me to understand their ability to learn English. Also, participant in settings during my observation days and my placement, I informed the vice principal, my associate teachers, the ELO learners themselves, and the students and various other colleagues. The data was collected in class, and it had vital information collected. The ELO students in the classroom were involved in the setting that took place in order for me to gather data, and when I was able to gather them and we discussed information during class when other students were in their math and literacy centers. So that's how I created that setting, and that's how I was able to collect data during class. Some of the ethical consideration, first, keep yourself informed about laws and regulations regarding the handling of personal information. Don't share information with people who don't need it. Keep your information in a safe place. Don't use the actual name of the student. Written consent needed from students and parents. Basically all the people involved in the studies. And finally, permission from the associate teacher and the vice principal of the school. Also, I created a timeline chart, basically how the process of the data collection. Some of the type of data was anecdotal notes, teacher journals. I gathered previous data from teachers who taught the ELL students, running record during guided reading, and how often it was collected. Anecdotal notes were collected daily during placement. Teacher journals were monthly reflections captured at the end of each week. Also, beginning my placement during observation, I was able to gather data from previous teachers who taught the ELL students, and also the running records were taken daily during literacy centers. So in closure of my action research, basically designing this action research study would support my knowledge of teaching in various ways. English language learners are students who are unable to communicate fluently, learning effectively in English, who often come from non-English speaking homes and backgrounds, and who typically require specialized or modified instructions in both the English language and in their academic courses. Basically, as a teacher, creating an environment that focuses on teaching LL students and creating an inquiry-based learning environment will definitely be beneficial for the growth of not only the teachers, but also the students. This knowledge will definitely help me as a learner and as a teacher, as it will allow me to apply the various practices of how to teach LL students with the use of inquiry-based learning. The various sources and journals that I've accumulated, along with the communicative information that I've gathered from various sources from my practicum, will allow me to apply the teaching practices that will be beneficial for me as an educator and to my students in the future. So definitely, I enjoyed gathering my research action plan. Some of the people I worked with, the students I worked with, definitely showed me another side of how to of how I can how I can support ELL learners in learning language, and how it will help me improve as an educator and also as a person. So I hope you were able to enjoy my research action plan, and I'm glad that this plan came into fruition throughout my time in my placement. Once again, this is Ryan Arellano, and thank you for listening.